Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our brand new study by W.N. Pickering on the identity of the New Testament text. We're going to take a look at pages 17 to 27, and we're going to examine the Wescott-Hort critical theory. It is the Wescott and Hort that led the revision committee that revised the underlying Greek text of the New Testament, which culminated their work in 1881. So we'll begin with block 1 and take a look at the underlying presuppositions of the Wescott and Hort critical theory. The revision committee ran from 1853 to 1881. Wescott and Hort agreed upon a venture to revise the Textus Receptus with the usage of earlier texts, namely Sinaiticus and Vaticanus B. It took 28 years to complete the project. Hort possessed a preconceived animosity for the received text, which included mainly documents after the 5th century. They kept the Codex Vaticanus B at the forefront of their work, but they needed a convincing theory of text transmission to accompany this work. The preconceived theory of text transmission used. They began with the axiom that they said there are no signs of deliberate falsification in the text for dogmatic reasons. They used what they called the genealogy method or the family tree method of tracing text transmission. In this way, the majority text could never outweigh the minority text. They posited the notion that the genealogy of text for the New Testament evolved through 4 voices: the neutral Jerusalem voice, the Alexandrian Egypt voice, the Western Rome voice, and the Caesarean voice. Antioch, they posited, combined Rome and Jerusalem together. But those were your main early century voices for the emergence of Christianity: Jerusalem, Alexandria, Rome, and Antioch. The 4 voices of genealogy of the text. Wescott and Hort grouped all of the majority texts under the voice of the Antioch or the Syrian, and they posited the notion that this voice was the inferior voice of those that we consider, because it had been corrupted through conflation. The proof of conflation. Conflation means that text types are grouped according to shared variants. Conflation, the evidence that there has been a mixture of voices in a text, making it a composite voice. Wescott and Hort concluded that the Byzantine or the Syrian text was a combined mixture of the neutral and the Western voices. In other words, Jerusalem and Rome. The Syrian or the Byzantine text. Hort's theory of conflation has been generally accepted today. He also turned to the pre-Nicene Fathers, and Chrysostom, who died in 407 AD, was a church father who used the Syrian text. Hort further posited that the received text quotations were never found prior to AD 350, so he also posited that the Syrian text, the Syrian voice, was a late evolving mixed voice of Jerusalem and Rome, but it's always like after the 4th century, after the 5th century, that it really evolved. Now the methodology in block 2. Evidence is based on intrinsic and transcript probability. Fit of context and style of author is prioritized, and the scribe or the copyist orientation. This has led to two methodological conclusions. Wescott and Hort concluded that the shorter reading is to be preferred because they believe that the text was added to at Antioch, and the harder reading is to be preferred. In other words, the harder reading would be the reason the prior text before alternate variant readings. Hort declared that the Syrian text to be one of harmonistic assimilation. Syrian text is harmonistic assimilation. The text seldom offends. It's free from surprises. It's very transparent. This opinion has been generally accepted today. The Syrian text is considered eclectic and late, becoming dominant only in the 5th century. The 5th century dominance of the Syrian text. An organized revision of the Greek text took place and was imposed upon the churches by ecclesiastical authority. The Syrian text was the result of a revision and editing process, an authoritative revision that took place at Antioch between 250 and 350 AD. Hort also posited the notion that Lucian was the church father who initiated this editing process at Antioch. Lucian died in AD 311. The Antioch revision of 250 to 350 AD. In addition to Lucian, it has been suggested that Rabula of Edessa also authored a later revision based on the Lucian revision. The Rabula revision is called the Peshitta text, or the Common Syrian Bible, Old Syrian text. The Lucian revision is dated at about AD 300. The Rabula revision at Edessa is dated at about 425. Hort's theory has successfully dethroned the Textus Receptus, a theory that has relied heavily on Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus B, both Alexandrian Eastern voices. So the Wescott-Hort Revision Committee preferred the Alexandrian voice, and they rejected the Syrian voice, which I said was a composite of Jerusalem and Rome. And the main texts coming out of Alexandria were Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus B. Cardinal Mai, the librarian at the Vatican, compiled Codex Vaticanus B. Tischendorf compiled Codex Sinaiticus. But now we know what these additions were that the committee, that Hort posited. Now we know what he was talking about. He claimed that there were two revisions that took place in Syria. They occurred late. They occurred in Antioch at AD 300, and then another revision occurred at Edessa at 425, and that resulted in longer text. In other words, there was a text added to the Gospel of Mark. There was a longer version of Mark in these later Textus Receptus manuscripts. The shorter version of Mark was evident in the Alexandrian text. So Wescott and Hort posited that these additions took place in the Syria revisions of AD 300 and AD 425. So that's why they justified in the mind of their revision committee, the right to abbreviate text and remove portions of text that they considered late additions for dogmatic reasons. Let's go to block 3 and take a look at the practical result of the Wescott-Hort presuppositions and the Wescott-Hort methodology. There has been a complete rejection of the Syrian text. But does this theory really correspond to the evidence, says the author? Because early church fathers did find corruptions in early manuscripts. Gaius, writing between 175 and 200, named heretics who corrupted the scriptures and then had them copied and multiplied. But here's your big one. Origen of Alexandria. There you go. Alexandria, Egypt. From 184 to 253, he wrote, "There is great diversity between manuscripts due to scribal error and due to perverse correction of the text or to lengthening of the text." So Origen of Alexandria claimed corruption very early in manuscripts. Now, was he speaking about Antioch manuscripts as compared to what he considered to be more pure Alexandrian manuscripts? We don't know. But he did write of corruption that he saw very early, 184 to 253. Origen testified to diversity and corruption of New Testament texts. But it could be either way. He could have been referring to the Antioch voice, the Antioch text, and it could have been his disapproval of additions being added there. Alexandria and Antioch were competing voices in the early centuries. So we get a good look at, like I said, the author prefers the Textus Receptus, the majority text. But it is interesting, Pickering is presenting to us the fact that Wescott and Hort did posit the Antioch addition theory. Additions were given to the text in Syria Antioch and Syria Edessa by Lucian and then by Rebula. And the Common Syrian Bible later reflected these longer readings. Therefore, the Wescott-Hort manuscript in 1881 would have shorter readings because they would edit back what they thought were false additions. The most well-known one is the addition to the Gospel of Mark. Early manuscripts of Mark do not have the later added ending that appears in different Greek script, different style, very noticeable, and it's generally agreed that there has been a scribal addition to the Gospel of Mark. That one is not even contested. But this gives us a look at the Wescott-Hort critical theory. And that'll wrap up our second lesson on the identity of the New Testament text by W. N. Pickering.